So today I wanted to talk about and show you all something incredible. We've been talking a lot about the lack of innovation in the industry. We've been talking a lot about stagnation and talking about what the future of game development is going to be. And I think that while we've talked a lot about examples of projects and technology that are painfully lacking innovation, I think a good way to keep ourselves grounded is to still point out examples of real innovation that is occurring in the industry, in the rare moments when they do. And what we're going to talk about in this video, what we're going to be looking at here, is, in my opinion, still one of those rare moments of true innovation that I think, as with any truly innovative advancement, will have a profound impact on the kinds of games and products that we see in the close future. Before we continue, I just want to say this. I've actually been talking with the developers of this system for many months now, possibly over a year, but I'm not entirely sure. And I've been watching the growth of this platform, watching the growth of the system and what they're offering. We've even discussed doing a sponsored video promoting their service, but I've come to the conclusion that this system is just so fundamentally profound that I should talk about it regardless. Because what they're doing is so innovative and so relevant that, quite frankly, it just deserves attention. So before we go any further, I want that fact to paint the rest of this entire conversation that we're about to have. This video is not sponsored. It is not biased in any way towards their platform. This is purely my awe and appreciation for what they are doing and what they are accomplishing, and I think more people need to know about it. And now that I've properly built up your expectations, what we're going to be talking about today is the SpatialOS networking framework by Improbable. Perhaps you've heard about it before, and perhaps not. However, if you haven't, SpatialOS is a decentralized networking solution for video games. And what this system is built to do is to allow existing developers the ability to create not just massive, but virtually infinite multiplayer games in existing engines, such as Unreal Engine 4, Unity, or even custom engines, if they are built or adapted to it. This system is built to be compatible with entity component frameworks, meaning it's cleanly structured, but it's flexible. But most importantly, this is a hosted networking service that allows scalability. And what that means is you could have 10 players in a match, or you could have 100,000 players in a match, and your business model is going to scale directly to that in parallel. But also, you're not going to just have 100,000 players split up into 10,000 different rooms. You're going to have everyone in a single unbroken environment of 100,000 players, all interacting and existing in a single instance. This means you could have a single continent with 100,000 players all in the same instance, or you could have a whole solar system of players all interacting in the same seamless world with both non-player characters and player characters continuously integrated. But let me get to the main point here, because you may not be impressed yet. You have maybe seen other games or other communities that have achieved similar levels of scale. Games like PlanetSide 2 or games like World of Warcraft. But if you're thinking of that as the first comparison that comes to mind, then you're not really understanding the thing that makes this the most profound. And what that is this is a system that provides the same level of scalability as something like PlanetSide 2, but it's for fucking sale. But literally anyone can use it. In the same ways that Unreal Engine 4 becoming free revolutionized the gaming industry, in the same way that even competitor projects to Unreal, such as Unity, becoming free and having all of these alternatives when you compare them to things like Frostbite, which is entirely proprietary, or Snow, whatever the hell it's called, that Ubisoft has that's entirely proprietary, that you can't touch. Those things by themselves, the fact that those occur and that people can find business models and infrastructure to support the occurrence of those kinds of transitions in the industry, where you have this powerful technology that is now propagated to a wide user base of people who can take advantage of it, that by itself is massive innovation. And when you look at the implications of something like this now being in the hands of the public, that by itself, as far as I'm concerned, is not only something that I think I'm incredibly excited about, but it is fundamentally innovative. The reason I am excited about it is because that is innovative. Now, the reason I found out about SpatialOS in the first place is because we happen to be looking into multiplayer frameworks for some of our own games and projects. And this is actually how I find out about the vast majority of games and projects that I cover. I found out about Hell Let Loose because Max was giving me advice on editing splines in 2016. I found out about Squad because I was talking with Foxhound about Unreal Engine 4 prototypes. And as with everything, eventually I stumble onto something amazing. And with SpatialOS, trying to find a viable alternative to Unity's terrible standard networking library is what led us to discover what they're doing. And when you compare something like SpatialOS to other network alternatives, like for instance Photon Unity Networking, which is another hosted networking solution that powers the game Verdun. I don't know how many of you remember the game Verdun. And Photon's networking infrastructure is based on rooms. So when you play Verdun, you'll notice when you join a game, all of the players are divided into isolated instances of 32 players each, which in my opinion is a massive waste of potential. You could replicate almost exactly this experience with community-hosted dedicated servers like Squad and Red Orchestra 2. And while having a cloud-based solution with rooms might be a convenient service, this isn't really taking true advantage of the scalability of decentralized cloud server infrastructure, especially when the developers themselves are footed with the bill of maintaining that infrastructure. So to say that SpatialOS is just a better version of Photon Unity networking would be unfair. SpatialOS isn't just a better version of something. SpatialOS is a elementary reimagining of what is physically possible with dedicated, decentralized cloud server networking infrastructure, where instead of just having a bunch of rooms or even just a bunch of isolated dedicated servers where you take your player base and you split them up into a whole bunch of different individual manageable segments, you exploit cloud infrastructure in order to power a completely different form of game and then make that technology available to the developers who want to make games with it. And that kind of idea of taking something that potentially even already exists, but then reapplying it, so it's not just doing the same thing, but maybe a little better, but is completely changing how people think about that thing at all. That is what innovation is. And when you compare this to other things that I actually think were equally innovative, I would say one of the last biggest true foundational innovations in the video game industry was the advent of voxel technology. Back when you had three-dimensional graphics, but you were limited in how much you could destroy or how much you could manipulate about the game world around you. The advent of voxel technology, it didn't just do the same thing better. It completely changed the idea of how games are made and how games are played. And when you saw the advent of voxel technology in a game like Minecraft, and then you see how many other games have spawned after that, that have not just taken inspiration from that original game, but have also taken that technology and reapplied it, and you can see an entire new genre of games evolving. This is the kind of impact that things like SpatialOS can have on an industry. So let's talk about predictions. Let's talk about the impact that something like SpatialOS can have on the industry for the games that it could be used to produce, the kinds of genres that might even emerge just because of its existence alone. The biggest strength of SpatialOS is the fact that it is scalable in any direction. As long as you have the business model where the player base can support itself, you can scale that player base in any direction that you want. And the reason this is possible is because of the way that SpatialOS is designed. When you look at typical room-based or server-based infrastructure for video games, the weak point is that within that instance or within that server, you are networking all of these different elements, all of these different entities together where they're all sharing information, which means in a linear fashion, as you continue adding more players to a single server, more players to a single instance, and they're all sharing information with one another, that is an exponential increase in traffic and in data load for that isolated server or for that isolated instance. But the strength of SpatialOS is at the lowest level of implementation. It is built to be decentralized and to spread that server load across a decentralized network. So instead of having one server maintaining 100 players in a single game, you have 10 servers maintaining 1,000 players in a single game. And the way SpatialOS does this is by culling all unnecessary data outside of a local group. So if you have 10 players on a map and then another 10 players very far away on the other side of a massive map, well, obviously they don't need to share as much, if any, data. However, on a more typical networking solution, let's say you have 100 players on a single server. If you were to add another 100 players, another 1,000 players, the way that network solution is built is to share all of that data across every single other player. So the more players you add, you are exponentially increasing that load, which isn't scalable. However, SpatialOS is built from the ground up to dynamically localize that load across a network of multiple servers synchronized all into a single cloud-based system where you can have 10 players, 100 players in a single group, or 10 players and 100 players in another single group, and then have all of these different groups stitched together into a single seamless experience. And going back to the beginning of the video, we can finally look at this simulation and actually see this shown in real time. Every single one of these color grids is showing different servers that are handling that localized group and that localized load. And you can also see it dynamically shift across the landscape as the servers are handing off this information and handing off this load onto one another to maintain optimal performance. Now, what does this mean? What kind of things are we going to see because of this? Well, the first and most obvious answer is anything. Or even who knows, but that's a cop-out. I don't want to say something like that because I do have a lot of ideas of what this could be used for. When you look at a lot of the games that we currently enjoy today, when you look at Arma, when you look at Squad, when you look at Red Orchestra 2, when you even look at the Battlefield series games and the limitations that they have of being a traditional networking solution where you only have these individual rooms and you don't have this kind of scalability, you could look and see how something like this could transform so many different kinds of games, or even create new kinds of games entirely that take advantage of this kind of scalability. And I think one of the first and most important things to point out is creating a massively multiplayer infrastructure like this is very difficult. And until now, the ability to just create a massively multiplayer game using a solution that has already been built and is available to you for free was never possible. In fact, when you look at PlanetSide 2, when you look at World of Warcraft, these development studios had to build their own solutions for a massively multiplayer game from scratch. And that is prohibitively difficult for a lot of other studios that make games that we enjoy. When you look at Arma, when you look at Squad, when you look at Red Orchestra 2, until now, they maybe haven't looked or even thought about the idea of creating a massively multiplayer game because both the infrastructure and the solution would be too much of an investment to create from scratch. But now that there is an actually accessible solution that can still give you that kind of scalability, you could have games that would never have otherwise considered the idea of becoming massively multiplayer. You know, imagine a 1,000 player match of Arma. Imagine a 5,000 player match of Squad. Imagine the massively multiplayer gameplay implications that this could have on some of the games we play today. Screw having 2-hour matches in Red Orchestra 2 or Squad or Arma or anything like that. Have an ongoing war across an entire continent. You could do World War II online scale games now with this system, with Unreal Engine 4, with Unity. And take pre-existing assets and take pre-existing developers who already have experiences in these engines and have already created other games that we enjoy, and then use this networking infrastructure to execute those visions and execute those ideas. That's huge. That's huge. It's also innovative. It's also innovative. So that's everything I would like to talk about today. I could talk about this for hours. In fact, there's a lot of other things that I haven't even talked about at all in terms of the potential of SpatialOS. Specifically, the fact that it's scalable not just in terms of having more players, but having more complex systems. For instance, one of the biggest games that has already been built on this system is a game called Worlds Adrift. And one of the coolest things about Worlds Adrift is it is one of the only massively multiplayer games that I have ever seen that actually uses vehicles that are based off of multiple parts and multiple components. And even games like a Crossout, which is still technically, even if it is cloud hosted or something like that, is still instanced into small scale rooms. Worlds Adrift is an actual massively multiplayer, continuously seamless game with that kind of construction, with that kind of destruction, and with that kind of content. And when you look at a lot of the games that we play and that we've enjoyed back in the day, when you look at Space Engineers, when you even look at Iron Armada, and all sorts of other things that could potentially take advantage of this, where you could maybe actually have a massively multiplayer game of Space Engineers. And not just something that's just exclusive and built by some studio that has proprietary technology that they don't let anybody use, but a modular system that any development team can utilize. Oh, that's awesome. So, that is it for today. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. And by the way, if you are interested, I do have another video that is posted on my private internal site talking about a couple of things, including World War III, and also giving an overview of some of our development projects that I'm sure you guys are interested in, including the Unreal Engine 4 project, Warfare 1944, and Iron Armada. So if you want to access that, go to my Discord and just send me a message, and I will whitelist you so you can watch our internal videos informing everybody about what's going on with the community. And then, in addition to that, this is going to sound kind of weird and random, but I have a bunch of other things in my life that I do that have been going really well, and if you are interested in being a part of that, there are a couple other places that you can check out, including God, this is going to sound weird for a lot of you who do not know that this is a thing that I do. My band, which is currently on Spotify with 40,000 monthly listeners, and we just peaked a 250,000 plays a month, and we also have a Discord channel here if you want to go and be a part of that community. I know that that's probably not something that very many people know that I do, but it's for some reason going pretty well. And if you want to be a part of that, then you can. Other than that, thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you appreciated this video. And also, if you have any thoughts on SpatialOS, on games that you think would be really cool for it, or if you are a programmer for Unity with C#, Unreal Engine 4 for C++, or any other kind of developer and you want to be a part of our community to talk about these kinds of things and to network and to potentially research and look into or work together on really interesting concepts like these kinds of things, you can go right here and you can file an application to become a beta tester or a developer with our community, or you can, of course, always just go ahead and hit me up on Discord, whatever you choose. But besides all that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Toodaloo.
In the stars tonight, what a wonderful world for another life waiting for you. In the stars tonight, what a wonderful world for another life waiting for you.